Welcome to Strategic Growth Council, a podcast about strategic growth and mergers and acquisitions for the middle market. Now, Strategic Growth Council also provides growth strategy planning work and peer advisory roundtables that meet virtually every month. We focus on solving members' cases or business dilemmas as a group, intentionally, consistently, and as a dedicated support team for one another. I serve as the moderator. Just contact me to learn more at strategicgrowthcouncil.com. But this is our podcast. And if you're interested in learning more about organic growth, growth by acquisition, or the sale of your company, this show will be interesting and useful for you. Thank you to our sponsor, Aclaro Growth Partners, a strategy consulting firm serving middle market M&A. Visit aclaropartners.com. Every episode, I interview an expert or participant in the world of strategy, growth, and M&A. And today, I'm pleased that I'm joined by Caroline Young of Craftsbury Consulting, which offers exit planning, preparation, and executive coaching. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear, I typically say 30 to 60 seconds worth of background on your experience, what brought you to this point in your career. So, love to hear more about your experiences historically and then where we are today.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, it's probably going to take more than 60 seconds because where I am today was so shaped and influenced by where I came from. So grew up in Vermont. I went to UVA for law school. And law school, I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I was dang sure I wasn't going to be a litigator because it scared the crap out of me. So ended up coming to Indianapolis, joining a law firm, and they instantly put me in the litigation group, which was just as scary as I thought. But it was great at getting me out of my comfort zone, figuring out how to present to an audience so that they would connect to it. You figure out negotiation skills, all those things. And it was great, but I never loved it. You're always bunking heads. So for two
Caroline, I'm going to interrupt. I warned you I probably would. So I went to UVA as well. And I would go over to the UVA Law School and get some books or do some studying. And there were a couple of things that I noticed when I went to the Darden Business School. People were really socializing, hanging out, just sort of like a fun atmosphere. And then in the law school library, oh my goodness, you guys were so serious.
Well, that's so funny you say that because I would say the opposite. It's probably because all the law students were over there at the Darden library because I felt like we had way more fun than they did. Played softball and it was a great school. I loved it.
Depends on what year, I guess.
My year was
first years.
Well, that's true. First years is a little scarier, but it was a great school. And so Absolutely. Glad I went there. And so glad I did the litigation piece because I learned so much from it. But happily moved on to private equity. And I remained in private equity for 20 years. Great firm called HKW. Started out doing some legal work there and quickly realized that wasn't the value proposition I wanted for myself or the firm. So I maneuvered my way onto more of an ops role and I became the partner in charge of exits. And so for most of my time there, I was helping firms get ready for the exit process, thinking about high-level strategy. How do you shape a company to be the most attractive on exit, and how do you get ready for that exit? And then I'd shepherd them through to the sale. And I would be like the cheerleader, the advisor, literally cracking the whip over CEO's head sometimes because it's such a stressful process.
And Caroline, you're selling yourself short a little bit because for those members of our audience who are not aware, in the world of business, private equity, you're the rock stars of the business world. And then within private equity, HKW is very well known and very well regarded. To become an operating partner is a big deal. And you have to have a lot of experience and know-how and skills to bring to the table. And to last 20 years in the world of private equity is a testament to your capabilities and skills. So, that may have been missed by some members of our audience, but I just wanted to point that out. It's an impressive resume.
Thank you.
So continue.
I appreciate that. There are so many smart people. I got to work with so many smart people, both within my firm, and I loved the management teams. I mean, great CEOs and teams that were passionate about their business. And to me, that's what I wanted to see on that exit process, is a team that loved their business, loved their future, we're kind of all in. And that's what makes for a really great sale process. But, as I said, sometimes I'd have to crack that whip. And one of the CEOs and his wife actually gave me a rhinestone-studded bull whip that I have hanging in my office. And that was my closing dinner gift. So that says a little bit about the exit process. So loved it. I really enjoyed it. But after 20 years, I decided I wanted another chapter. So I'm really leveraging my experience in my prior chapters to help people, both through, as you say, kind of the executive coaching side. And mostly I'm working with women. I spent 20 years really being the only woman in the room. And I know what that's like and have some thoughts on how to leverage that. So most of my work is with women, some men as well. And then I'm also working with business owners because, again, I spent 20 years helping prepare companies for sale and then shepherding them through that exit process. So I know it so well. I've lived it, I've breathed it, and there's a lot of things that you can do to make that a better process. And I feel like there's kind of a black box out there. People don't really understand what that process is and how to best prepare for it and really understand what that future can look like. Because I think in life, if you can't visualize where you want to go, it's really hard to get there. So I like to help people visualize where they can go so they can get there.
That's wonderful. So just to clarify, two distinctly different services, and that's a question: coaching and then preparation for a potential sale of a business. Is that right?
It is. It's funny. It's like I was working on my website. It's like there's such different things. Like there's a lot of commonality. As I said, it's about visualizing what you want and leveraging both your personal strengths or your company's strengths and figuring out what's getting in the way, both for yourself and your company. So there's a lot of parallels with what I do, but they're pretty different. So probably in the future, I may split it into two companies. But right now, Craftsbury does both. And I love both of them. They feel pretty different, but I work with so many great women and some great men, and I love helping them be their most impactful selves. And then the business side, it's just so interesting, and I love learning about new companies and helping people, find the strength of that company in a way that buyers are going to fall in love with it.
Yeah, and I want to take them one at a time, but first, and these are my words, and feel free to refute what I'm about to say. Coaching is more about personal growth, and exit planning is more about the growth and preparation for the company as a whole. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
I would, for the most part. I would say on the business side, it's not really necessarily coaching. It's sort of coaching, but it is for the owners, this is their baby. And this is a big part of who they are in their life, and helping owners understand what that sale can be to them is also really important. I talked to someone the other day, they were like, yeah, and this is like a 50% owner that does all the sales. And he was like, yeah, I want to sell like in about 9 months and then do something else. And it's like, he's the head sales guy. You're not going to have a very successful exit if you're gone on close. So you have to understand that just selling your business doesn't mean you walk away day one. So understanding what your options are. Private equity has a bad name out there, and to me, it's very misunderstood in terms of what it can mean for that owner. So it's helping them understand that too.
Well, before we dive into your businesses or your two service areas, let's probe on that, because that's a topic we've covered in previous podcasts. Private equity is a dirty name, and I think it started with leveraged buyout organizations, and we've sort of as an industry just adopted private equity, but that's a big broad umbrella term that covers all investments of any company, venture stage, growth, buyout, big companies, small companies. So it's a kind of a big broad term, but why is it that private equity has this bad reputation, or why is it that a business owner would would have the perception that private equity is a negative, and why are they wrong? I mean, who better to ask than somebody who spent 20 years in private equity?
Yeah, well, I think the news likes to find negative versus positive. That's how they make money. So that's what they focus on, is some bad examples. Um, and I will say there's very different firms out there. So if you're selling your company and you've got private equity interested in you, you got to do your own diligence and figure out what kind of firm is it. Some firms are more hands-on than others, some are more operational, but really at its heart, private equity, they buy a company to make it better.
Right.
They don't buy it to tear it apart. That's not how they make money. They make money by growing it, by doing acquisitions, by helping build out the team. So understanding, more about the firm is really, really important. But in general, most firms are there to support teams, to help them grow, to bring an operational expertise that maybe wasn't there before, and then to sell it for even more money. So, a lot of owners, for HKW, most all of the founders would reinvest. It's called a rollover investment. And most of them made more money on the second sale than they did on the first. So it's called the second bite of the apple. And that's a really important concept, that you're not just selling and walking away. You can sell, be a part of it, stay on as CEO if you want, or maybe you want to sort of pass on the baton during that ownership, or maybe you've set up a new president that can then step into your role. There's a lot of ways to do it, but just thinking you're going to sell and walk away is not a realistic thing. And there's so much great opportunity out there. We had one closing dinner, and it was the CEO. She had not been a prior owner, so she invested a little bit of money, but most of her shares came through options. And we were sitting around the table, and she gave a little toast, and she looked at us, HKW folks, and she goes, "You do realize that you changed lives." And it was such a beautiful, it's like, that's what it was all about. Like, she was like, our kids are going to college, and maybe we can buy a new house, or our retirement looks different. And that, to me, is the beauty of private equity, because you're spreading out that wealth to a broader set of the management team. You're giving opportunities for teams to grow and learn.
You didn't explicitly state that, but it is common as well for the first tier of management to share in some form of equity. And that's an important, I don't want to say trigger, because that sounds negative, but that's an important incentive component. Sure. That's an important component of what private equity is all about, is to incentivize management to be in lockstep. In other words, exactly. We all share in the gains of the company's growth and development and maturation. So
yeah, you want them in a seller mindset as well.
Right. All right. So back to coaching. Let's start with coaching.
Yeah.
So I think I know a lot about coaching. I have a son and a daughter. I coached both of their teams to the basketball championship. So no, that's not the type of coaching that we're talking about here, obviously. So what is executive coaching or business coaching?
Yeah, and I take a little bit different tact on it probably than most. I'm not a certified coach. I thought about it and then decided I wanted to just really, I've read a lot of books on it, but leverage my experience to help people. And it's been super effective. I'm really proud that well over half the women I worked with last year got promoted. And that, to me, I'm just so proud of them. And I'm proud of Craftsbury too for what we've put together. But so how I think about coaching, it is sort of a whole life thing. Like my first side, are you eating right? Are you getting exercise? Are you putting your phone away? And then we get into what really matters to you. What feeds your soul? What are your strengths? What's getting in the way, and how are we going to work past it? And we set goals and set vision. And a really important part of the career development engagement that we do is a 360. So I'm talking to usually 4 to 6 supervisors or coworkers, sometimes people that report up. And people give me, especially given my background, they give me really unvarnished, direct feedback. And that is super important. Like, what are the strengths? What's getting in the way? What's that path to promotion? What does he or she need to do to get
And when
there.
you're soliciting that 360-degree feedback from people who know this person in different capacities, upper level, lower level, left, right, why is it that they're as candid as, I think you've shared a little bit of this with me previously. Why are they as candid as they appear to apparently are?
Well, for one, it's safe. It's safe to tell me something really direct. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get defensive. I just purely want to learn so I can help that advisee. That's my sole goal. And so it's much easier. And I will say, especially when it's a woman and it's a male supervisor who pretty much has all men, it's intimidating and they want to be careful. And that gets in the way of getting the really clear feedback you need. And the beauty of the 360 is after they've given me that feedback, it becomes easier to give it directly to that person because they know the person's heard it. And I just feel like it opens up that door to clearer feedback. And I'm also working with people on taking feedback. It's really important not to get defensive. It's so easy to take things personally. But if you approach feedback as this person's trying to help me, and there's kernels, maybe I don't agree with 100%, but there's a lot, they're giving me this feedback to help me. What can I take from it and learn to improve? So it just helps on both sides of the feedback. And I'm also kind of coaching sometimes these managers. Like I had one guy, and he was great guy. I'd worked with him a number of times, and he has an advisee, and I did 360, and he's like, oh, she's so smart. She's so organized. She gets more out of our management teams than anyone. She just needs to be more assertive. And I was like, you do understand. And he had just talked about there are all white male fraternity guys in this firm. And I was like, you do know that success is going to look a little different from her than all you white male fraternity guys. And he goes, I think I'm going to learn more from this engagement than she is. And it was just like that little light bulb moment. But
Absolutely.
He was also right. She needed to speak up more. She needed to assert herself. So it was like going at it from both directions made all the difference. She got promoted to director, and she's cranking. She's doing great.
Well, what you just did was something that I suspect very few coaches would have done, would have taken that risk, or I don't know what you call it, but that was a very keen observation and a poignant one. And I'm glad he received it well, because that's a very good point.
And it was clear, I do a check-in call. It was clear he heard it, he got it, and he was leveraging it in a way that helped his team and helped her. So I think that's a differentiator in the way that I approach it. And I can also,
so let's get back to the.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I can also really find out what is needed to get to the next level. And then I can incorporate that in my sessions. And I do one-on-one sessions, like 90-minute sessions. And we deal with both what's going on from a day-to-day basis. If it's an M&A person, what are your deals? We talk about pitching. But there's also like confidence, leadership, business development. I mean, there's key topics. I have books that I have them read. So it's
a couple questions. So first of all, 90-minute session, is that weekly or monthly?
Monthly. And then I'm always available. If someone needs something, they'll call me and we'll check in, but we do it monthly.
And you said most of your mentees, coachees are women, but not necessarily. You do have several men. And then most of your connections are in the world of mergers and acquisitions, but I suspect, if a woman or a man wanted to be coach, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be involved in investment.
No, I've got a woman that's in the insurance world. I've got a woman who's a CEO of a manufacturing company. So yeah, it really.
Is there a duration? I mean, do they sign on for a year, or what's the outcome? How do you know when you're finished?
I started out with the outcome is often they want more. No, I started doing 6 monthly sessions, and I increased it to 9 because I felt like 6 wasn't quite enough. And then sometimes I'll do an extension, and usually it's the firm hires me and then assigns high-performing women to me. So KeyBank's
Nice.
been a
Yeah.
great supporter. And so I've had 5 women last year and 5 this year. And I'm working with a lot of the big name banks. Harris Williams has been great, and Lincoln and Stifel, and I just started with William Blair. I mean, there's just great companies. And so it's usually the firm. And I must say, for me to sell Craftsbury, I got to go pretty high. And then they say, oh, this is great. And then they'll hire me to work with the women. And then I've had a few people approach me, and then I'll work with them without it going through the company.
Excellent. So how would you say you're different as a coach than other coaches, business coaches, executive coaches might be?
Well, I do think I'm really leveraging that prior experience. And then
Hmm.
for the women, it can be hard to be the only woman in the room every day. Uh, so I have that experience. I have 2 great grown kids, so I know what it's like to try and balance things. So I'm bringing that perspective of kind of been there and done that. And I, while it can be exhausting to be the only woman in the room, it can be a real advantage. You stand out. You're different. People are going to remember you. So, what energy are you bringing in the room? What connectivity? And really putting forth that kind of positive mindset and ability to connect with people, to me, I think is one of the most important things you can do to help people in a coaching way. So it's really, that's kind of the way I go at it is, what is your vision, and how do you want to be as a person getting there? And
Hmm.
really trying to help people live in the present, but figure out where they want to go at the same time.
Good. So Caroline, last question on the coaching side, and then I want to move over to the exit planning side. Uh, I know from my business, peer advisory roundtables, there are people that are probably not a good fit for that environment. And I'm wondering, is the same true for coaching? Are there people who are, to use a negative term, uncoachable, or are there people who are better suited? Maybe that's a better way to look at the glass half full.
Yeah, there's some people, it's just you click, and it's just like, it's they get it, and it's like, oh, this is awesome, and you just go. And then there are other ones where I have to figure out how to best help them. And they may be a little bit less open to start, but I just try and figure out what's the different angle. I had one, I was kind of nervous because she was really tough on her junior people. She was like, it's just a little intimidating. And I'm like, man, usually it's helping people put themselves out there versus being nice. And you know what? By the end of the first session, it was like we had totally clicked. She was like, I don't even know what's behind my own barriers. She's totally opened up, and we had the greatest working relationship. So there's definitely some where I got to go at it from a different angle than I usually do. I haven't, and I know some get more out of it than others. So far, I haven't had anyone that's been just like, oh, this is just not a click, but I know there will be. And I'll try not to take it personally. It's like anything else. So you click better with some people than others. But so far, I've really loved them all. They've been great.
Good, 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 good. Okay, so switching gears to exit preparation consulting work. So what? I mean, I guess a couple questions. What is involved in preparing a business for sale, and what related to that are there common shortcomings that you consistently see that businesses just overlook, or they're not prepared, or they're not as sophisticated as they are in other areas, or does it vary dramatically?
I think it varies, but one of the most important things I think for a business owner is to step back and think about value in a different way. Like, their value proposition to a customer is one thing, and that's super important in the sale process. But you also have to think about your value proposition to the buyer, which is different. Not all revenue is created equal. If you're big projects, your $100,000 of revenue is very different than a recurring revenue just comes in every month. So stepping back and thinking about your business from the buyer's perspective, and you have to understand that the buyer is not buying your company for what it is today under your ownership. They're buying it for what it's going to be under their ownership. So the more you can be sort of granular and thoughtful about what that future is and show traction towards that future, and you make it tangible, the more value it's going to create. So it's really a mind shift into thinking like a buyer is super important. The other thing I would say is making sure you have your financials just really clean and detailed. The last thing you want to do is go out to market saying, here are numbers, and they're not really your numbers because you haven't scrubbed them with a fine-tooth comb. Having a buyer come back and say, well, it's actually $1 million less, hurts. And either they're going to walk away or they're going to ding you big time. So make sure you get your financials in order and make sure you really understand what that growth path is. Make it tangible. Those are the things that are really important. I mean, there's a lot of important things. There's so much that comes with an exit that I work with owners on. But those are two really important ones.
I heard you use the word traction a minute ago, and I'm not sure if that was intentionally. I don't think we've talked about this before, but are you familiar with Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS?
I am.
Do you use EOS at all in either coaching or?
Some of the people I've worked with have. So I've sat through some of the meetings. I think it can be a great tool, especially if you have not kind of formalized a lot of things within your business. It can be very helpful. There's quite a lot that comes with it. And I think as you grow, maybe you take the best parts of it. I think after a year or two, you can figure out how to best do it. But I know a lot of people have really found that very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, for those people who might be listening or watching and are not familiar with it, you can look up EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be careful. It's a tool that would be probably more appropriate for businesses that are in the lower end of the middle market than in the upper end of the middle market.
I would agree with that.
But it's very nice because it is so neat and simple and straightforward and achievable. And so it's I find it a good tool. Any good case study examples of businesses that you've helped prepare for a sale, situations maybe that have gone nicely, well?
There's a lot of them, Kit. There's a lot of them.
And of course, I can't resist asking about situations where, boy, there was a skeleton in the closet or, snake under the woodpile or whatever the example is.
There's a couple of those too, but fortunately I've had a lot of great companies and a lot of great sale processes. But I will say what comes with that was starting to think about the exit the day we bought the company. And, there's really never too early to start thinking about the exit. So what is that growth strategy that's from that buyer mindset's going to create the most interest? So we had one company, is a great company. The owner had hired a small broker only went out to 4 or 5 people. Unfortunately, HKW was one of them, and we acquired it. And then we pretty quickly brought in a great investment bank, and we sat down and we said, what are buyers going to want to see here? And we talked about our strategy, and it was, we put in geographic growth. We did an add-on to show that was a logical, good way to grow. Put in a much broader sales team with broad geographies. Grew into a couple different end markets. It was probably 3-4 years. We used that firm. They did a great job, broad process, and it was a very nice return. So being thoughtful about what are those growth avenues, what are the things that we want to achieve. That founder did not want to be the CEO in the next turn. So we brought in a great president because team is super important. So that was a great example of a start to finish, being thoughtful on the exit.
That's great. And so thinking about it, just in my own words, when you buy a company or when you're beginning a period of ownership, you're thinking about who the likely acquirer would be and what it would be that would attract that buyer to this company, what might make your business more attractive, therefore more valuable, what may hold you back in terms of making it less sellable or sellable at a lower price. And so you sort of plot out a path to get to the desired point. And it's usually not one potential acquirer. It's
No,
sort
you
of like,
never know.
okay, right.
You never know.
But you're developing a strategy based on, okay, how can we make this business as attractive as we can to the next acquirer?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting mindset because not many entrepreneurs or business owners think about it that way. It's a common expression. So, okay, we're at point A, and how do we get from point A to point C? And it's not always a straight line, and we know that there's some hurdles and things that come up, and you get to a certain point, and there's stair steps,
Yeah. So like I did a retreat, and I'm going to do another one. It's going to be great. And it's all about educating on the sale process. And we talk about that. We talk, what are value drivers? Growth, team, visibility. There's all these different value drivers in a business. So understanding what are the key value drivers in a business. And then what are the detractors? Customer concentration, supplier concentration. That's risk. It's big risk. So understanding, that a buyer's going to call your top 3, 5, however many customers. What's your relationship with them? Making sure they're going to say the right things. Making sure, you understand what that process is going to entail. So, in the retreat, it's what are the value drivers? What are the detractors? How do you think about timing? How are companies going to value you? What's the buyer universe? What does it mean to get bought by PE? And what does it mean to be bought by a strategic, where you may get folded into a bigger organization? There can be huge benefits both for your team, your company, your customers, but it's a different outcome than if you are just a platform company for private equity. So I try and help owners understand what those different paths might look like and mean to them, their team, their customers, their community, because all those things are really important in a sale process.
Well, I want to come back to the retreat, and I want to learn more about how our audience might be able to reach out to you and learn more. So we'll get the web address up on the screen. But before I do that, you mentioned a couple of detractors that you just happened to toss out: customer concentration risk, supplier risk, just as a couple of examples. But I think it's important to acknowledge that in some industries, you're stuck. You have a limited number of suppliers. Okay, that's the given in your industry. Now what are we going to do? Now what can we work on? Or, you have 3 customers that represent 75% of your revenue. It is what it is. You're not going to get rid of those customers, but what else can we do to mitigate that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it in that kind of situation, and that's very true. I mean, say you're in the aerospace. We had several aerospace. There's not very many buyers, and you are going to have customer concentration. But maybe you can build out your data to show, okay, we're on this many airline platforms, or we sell to different divisions within that same company. So it's different buyer universes. Or here's how sticky it's been. We land, we expand within that customer. So there's ways to get buyers comfortable with those detractors. But if you just walk into your sale process without thinking that through and building out that story, then they're going to be like, whoa, that one customer leaves. What am I bought? I bought half the revenue that I thought I was buying. So how do you get them comfortable with what may be just a key part of the business? And I think being thoughtful in advance is really, really important. And to that point, really understanding what are the key performance indicators of your business. And a lot of people just aren't tracking that. And I tell you what, when you go to market, you got to go fast. I mean, I have a number of stories on the less positive side of what can happen in a sale process. Time is a risk. I had one where the 2 largest customers combined, they were maybe 20% and 18%. And all of a sudden, we're right at the LOI stage, and we don't have a largest customer that's 20%. We have a largest customer that's almost 40%. That's a big difference. And and you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Or another case where one of the largest projects, it was a dam project up in Canada, and the Canadian government said, we might put this on hold. And it's like, so we're just jumping
Those
on putting a
dam
memo.
projects.
Oh,
Sorry, couldn't resist.
It's tough. So, you want to be ready to go and go fast. So what's the information buyers are going to want? And you're not going to have it all, because they're going to make you're just not going to believe how much information they want and how they want to slice and dice, but make sure you're slicing and dicing it in the most important ways that they can get comfortable with your business.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And that I've never really understood to that degree the reason why it is so important to move quickly. It's because things change. Things change that, your example of that customer that was 20%, they're now 40%. That seems like a really good thing for management. They did something great. Their best customer likes them that much, but it's actually more risk for the buyer. So it's a negative. So you can't control that. So I get it. A quick plug for Aclaro Partners, because some of what you were describing, I know they're really engaged in and do a great job with on the sell side market study. So if you're painting a picture of a story, and you're stuck with a situation where you have some supplier concentration, and you're able to explain, well, here's the reason why this is not as big a concern as you might otherwise assume. When you're able to tell that story and lay it out very clearly for a buyer, you're reducing risk. So those sell side market studies can be very helpful in that regard as well. So back to the retreat. I'm not sure I was aware of that. So let's hear a little bit about that, and then and how our audience can contact you, and then certainly if there's anything else that you wanted to share.
Sure. So before I forget, if you go on our website, craftsburyconsulting.com, there's a link in info@craftsburyconsulting.com, email, and love to hear from you. Love to have folks at the retreat. Last one we did at a dude ranch, we'll probably do the same, so you can kind of get away. I happen to love horses, so but there's also a shooting range and e-bikes and all those things. But so it's about getting out of your setting and stepping back and thinking about your business in a different way. And I have a ton of great content. I'm working on a case study from start to finish, so you can really understand when someone talks about a teaser, what does that mean? Or a confidential information memorandum, what is that? So we'll help you walk through what is a process so you can get ready. We'll help you understand what the buyers are. We'll help you know what are the advisors you need and how do you pick them. There's a lot of great investment bankers out there. How do you find the right one for you? And I'll tell you, fit is incredibly important, as is the ability to run a really competitive process. And some bankers are way better at that than others. So how do you suss out, well, which one's the right one for me? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about, do you need a market study? What are the different options of things? And, Aclaro is someone I've worked with in the past, and they do a great job. So as well as being, what you do is you provide a support system for CEOs. And that's also part of the retreat, is having other CEOs so you can sort of talk through, what are our strengths? How do I think about growth? How do I make this more tangible for buyers? So it's a 3-day event, and we do some fun activities, but we also, really help you understand what the exit process is and how to get ready for it. And it doesn't, in the last one we had a woman, she had just started her business maybe a year earlier. It was on a really nice trajectory, and she just wanted to know how to think about exits down the road. And another one was 75 years old, and she was third generation. It's men and women, but so it's a great experience. It's a lot of fun, and I love helping owners think about this, because it's a really important milestone in your life, and being ready for it and being thoughtful about it can make all the difference in the outcome.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you, Caroline Young, Craftsbury Consulting. Check them out online. And, I'm a big fan, not only of Caroline, but also the work that she has done and does. And it's similar, particularly the concept of the retreat, bringing people together in person to collaborate and mutually support one another, as well as to learn, is very similar to the work that we do at strategicgrowthcouncil.com. So take a look. We're a peer advisory council. We meet in person, but we also mainly meet virtually on a monthly basis for several hours, and we help solve cases. So if you're interested in learning more, go to strategicgrowthcouncil.com. But also, it's a good place to check out not only this episode, but all of our episodes. You can follow us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Put us in your listening queue, review the show, give us a rating, and thanks for listening.
Produced by Heartcast Media.